So as they carry on doing their circuits, we then start to see a daytime
A
moon again as the
15-degree
sun
drift per hour.
gets faster and increases the
Per
gap between the sun and
hour.
the moon. And then we have the waxing phases of the moon. We have a sliver of a crescent, and that becomes a greater crescent. Then we've got a half moon. So somewhere around this point where they're doing a few laps and the sun has got further away from the moon, then we see a half moon.
Okay, stop right there, because I'm about to destroy your model. Not physically, of course. That would be mean, especially in front of his son. Let's look at that screenshot where you
Oh
said
yeah.
specifically you would be seeing a half moon, where you are in Phuket. Now, okay, you may see a half moon if that was the case, but a person here near the North Pole would be seeing a full moon, would they not? This means that in your model here, you're explaining different phases of the moon at different locations on Earth. And of course, in reality, this doesn't happen. And that, of course, is an absolute killer blow for you, Phuket Word. So we'll leave it there for today, safe in the knowledge that you've been thoroughly trounced. So that's it. We're all done for another Flat Earth Friday. Thank you so much for watching. It really is appreciated. If you enjoyed it today, then please do consider hitting that subscribe button. We're on a race to 500,000. And if you really enjoyed it, then hit the like button as well. Just enough time to once again thank Babbel for sponsoring today. Remember, if you click the link in the description, you will get 65% off a subscription. And of course, they now have the 20-day money-back guarantee. I have been Simon Dan. Have yourselves a cracking weekend, and I'll see you on Tuesday for the return of Jake the Arsehole, but he's not talking about Flat Earth. See you then.
All done and dusted, oi. Sideman, Dan, and Flat Earthers. The simple treat.
Personally,
What I want to do today is to create a better training ground for my walkers.
As an adult, Marissa worked as a special police officer in the DC Library Public Safety System. She had one son who she lived with in Indian Head, Maryland, which is just south of DC. On August 4, 2022, Marissa made her way to the Anacostia Neighborhood Library on Good Hope Road, southeast in Washington, D.C. She was there, along with 3 other special police officers, to receive training on how to use a baton and handcuffs. A 58-year-old man named Jesse Porter had been hired as a private contractor by the library special police to conduct the training. He was a retired lieutenant who had served for 33 years with the Metropolitan Police Department of the District of Columbia. He owned his own company called Porter Consulting and Expert Tactical Training. Jesse had an employee named Byron who assisted him with the training. He was a current police officer with the Metropolitan Police. A DC Public Library supervisory officer was also on site. His name was Anthony. The training session started at 8 a.m. on the lower floor of the library. The 4 trainees watched a PowerPoint presentation. During the training, Jesse Porter had a Glock 26 9mm pistol in a holster on his right hip. During the interactive portion of the training, the trainees put on body armor and started the physical component. They practiced baton techniques on a large sandbag before moving to handcuffing techniques. When the training was over, the trainees removed their body armor and other training equipment and completed paperwork. At this point, the decision was made to get a photograph of the trainees with the instructors. As they were preparing for the photograph, Marissa could be seen adjusting her hair. Allegedly, Jesse witnessed this and referred to Marissa as Rihanna, presumably as a way of making fun of her for being interested in her appearance. The trainees posed in a line together with one trainer on each end as Anthony prepared to take the picture. Byron was standing all the way to the left of the line, Jesse was standing all the way to the right, and Marissa was the second person from the left. so she was standing just to the right of Byron. At this point, Marissa realized that she had her mask on. She removed it from her face, turned to the right, and appeared to attempt to put it in her right pocket. She said something like she wasn't ready. One of her fellow trainees jokingly said, "She's never ready." At this point, Jesse stepped out of the line, walked forward a few steps, and said, "Here we go again." Using his right hand, he retrieved his Glock 26 pistol from the holster on his hip, turned to his left, aimed the pistol at Marissa, and fired one time. The bullet struck Marissa in the chest, and she fell to the floor, crying in agony. Immediately after the shooting, the remaining people in the room scattered, perhaps wondering if Jesse was going to shoot them next. Like, what was this guy doing? Why did he just pull out his gun and shoot a trainee? Jesse appeared to be distraught. He moved around frantically and tried to help Marissa. He said, "I thought I had my training gun. Why did I do this? Is she okay?" The answer to his question was no. 25-year-old Marissa Manion died not long after being shot. At 3:32 p.m., which was right after the shooting, the police were notified. Jesse told them that he was taking a picture and joking around when he removed his firearm from his holster and then heard it discharge. In May 2023, 9 months after Jesse killed Marissa, he was indicted for second-degree murder while armed, possession of a firearm during a crime of violence, and unlawful discharge of a firearm. On August 25, 2023, just over a year after the killing, Jesse Porter pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter while armed and unlawful discharge of a firearm. He was facing a minimum of 3 years in prison and a maximum of 7. Ultimately, the judge sentenced Jesse to 3 years, saying, quote, "I think it is the punishment appropriate for what the evidence shows was a tragic mistake," unquote. Now moving to my analysis. Many people, including some of Marissa's family members, were very upset by the sentence that Jesse received. They felt as though he committed second-degree murder and deserved to be in prison much longer than 3 years. Usually, the government pursues murder charges when one person shoots another with no justification. But in this case, they offered Jesse a good plea deal. Did they do this because he was once a law enforcement officer or because it was warranted by the evidence? In Washington, D.C., second-degree murder is when, with malice aforethought, one person kills another. Malice aforethought can be met by any of these 4 conditions: intending to kill another, intending to inflict great bodily injury, possessing reckless indifference to an unjustifiably high risk of human life, or intending to commit a felony which results in a homicide. This brings me to the question, was Jesse Porter guilty of second-degree murder? Let's take a look at the evidence both for and against the idea he was guilty, starting with the inculpatory factors. There is no question that Jesse aimed his pistol at Marissa and fired one time, killing her. There was no justification for this. Marissa was not a threat. He just killed her out of the blue. Prior to the shooting, Jesse appeared to be somewhat aggravated with Marissa. For example, he criticized Marissa because she was reading too slowly from a PowerPoint presentation. He told Anthony that the next time he should bring a white helmet for Marissa. Later, Marissa provided what Jesse believed to be an incorrect answer to a question. Jesse pointed an orange training pistol at her and said, "Bang, bang, wrong answer," as he pretended to shoot her. Training pistol or not, this was a bad idea. This lesson was not about firearms. Jesse had no reason to do this. Right before the shooting, Jesse appeared to be frustrated that Marissa delayed the photograph by removing her mask. He proclaimed, "Here we go again." This supports the theory that Jesse impulsively shot and killed Marissa because he was upset with her. The heart of Jesse's defense was that he thought he was holding an orange training pistol, but that still doesn't explain why he pulled the trigger. It was Jesse's responsibility to be aware of what type of pistol was in his holster and to verify what type of pistol he had in his hand prior to pulling the trigger. Moving to the exculpatory factors, Jesse had no reason to intentionally kill Marissa. One could argue that he was reckless, which is still enough for second-degree murder, but there was no intent. For example, right after the shooting, he indicated that he had been joking around, and Jesse did appear to be genuinely upset after the shooting. He did not look like a man who killed.
Lumber Liquidators offers great floors at great prices. Now, Corlux.
Fucking dumbasses doing dumbass things. How the hell are you even going to think that's even funny in the first place? I'm going to pretend to shoot you. Hilarious.
Was in his holster. Earlier, he had pointed that pistol at Marissa and pretended to shoot her. Maybe he was simply doing the same thing, except this time he was holding his Glock 26. When considering all the evidence in this case, do I believe that Jesse Porter was guilty of second-degree murder? No, I believe he was guilty of involuntary manslaughter. The problem I have with the outcome of this case isn't the conviction, it's the sentence. I believe 7 years was warranted in this case, not 3 years. Here's why I believe this. Sometimes police officers mistakenly discharge a real firearm when they intended to fire something else, like a taser. These types of cases often result in a manslaughter conviction, not a murder conviction. For example, in 2021, a police officer in Minnesota named Kim Potter shot and killed a man who was resisting arrest. She was convicted of manslaughter and received a sentence of 2 years. Jesse's case is similar. However, I believe his sentence should have been the maximum of 7 years because there is a key difference in the circumstances. Kim Potter was dealing with somebody who was resisting arrest. She was in a stressful and potentially life-threatening situation. She had the right to retrieve and fire her taser. That level of force was justified. Unfortunately, she mistakenly retrieved and fired her pistol instead. In the case of Jesse Porter, he had no justification for pulling anything out of his holster. Not an actual firearm, not a training pistol, nothing at all. He created the danger completely on his own. He wasn't responding to a threat, and he did not pull the pistol as part of a training exercise. There is no excuse for his behavior. Furthermore, Jesse Porter held himself out as an expert trainer. One would think that he would have been more vigilant than a typical officer, not less. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Jesse Porter was unprofessional, did not have respect for firearms, and liked to joke around. There's nothing wrong with having a sense of humor, but pointing a training pistol at a person and pretending to shoot it is not funny. Jesse started a bad habit. He did something with the training pistol that was completely unnecessary and increased the likelihood that if he accidentally pulled a real pistol, he would point it at a person and pull the trigger. When the group was getting ready for the photograph, Marissa caused a slight delay. In an effort to build on the earlier theme of mockery, implying that Marissa was somehow a troublemaker, dim-witted, or vain, Jesse jumped out of line, retrieved his pistol, pointed it at Marissa, and pulled the trigger. He probably did believe the training pistol was still in his holster. His intent was simply to jokingly call out Marissa for her behavior, not to shoot her. Unfortunately, Jesse ended up killing her. Again, he had formed a bad habit, one that Marissa paid for with her life. Those are my thoughts on the case of Marissa Manion and Jesse Porter. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon.
We quilt this city. We quilt this city with a coffee. We'll quilt this city. We quilt this city with a coffee.
Keep it quilted with Quilted Northern.
Breathe in, receive my enlightenment in through your nose, out. No phones during asana.
Yeah, as soon as I complete this level of Royal Kingdom.
This is for relaxation.
So is Royal Kingdom. It's the new puzzle game. Sometimes easy, sometimes hard, but always satisfying. It takes my mind to a whole new level. Plus, there are no ads or nasty pop-ups to take you out of the moment. I've never been so chill.
This is unaligning of our chakras.
You're unaligning the chakras.
I want to play.
I would like to play too.
I try not to let commercials play, I'm sorry.
the people who are crossing the border, but why are they coming here? Why are they coming here? They're coming here because people are willing to give them jobs. They will cross rivers. They will cross terrain. They'll do whatever they can to make a better life for their children.
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And what he do? And he's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another fun-filled episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, your very own board-certified criminal defense lawyer, coming to you live from the downtown office of Minneapolis with my pearl and little pistol cufflinks, so graciously gifted to me by my son and former content genius, Michael Rivers. God rest his soul. Today we're reacting to the events in LA. Now, the Trump administration has ushered in a new era of the crackdown on immigration. Legal immigration, illegal immigration, any kind of immigration, you got it. Here's the thing that I don't like. You know, I'm a liberal. I'll admit it. I'm a social liberal, but fiscal conservative. Okay, that's how I kind of lean. But I'm mostly a libertarian, honestly. I believe that immigration has got a very valuable part of our, fabric of our country. It's how we were founded. It's where we get a lot of our workers in this country, and we can crack down on the people who are crossing the border. But why are they crossing the border? Are they murderers? Are they rapists? Are some of them are good people? Who said that? I don't know. I almost forgot. But before we get to that, before we get to all this immigration stuff, we're going to talk about AskALawyer.com. AskALawyer.com, very valuable resource when you are looking to either sue somebody or you're getting sued, or you might have a legal claim, maybe you don't have a legal claim, but you want to talk to a lawyer, a live lawyer. For $49, you can get, where you need to say, oh, I need a referral for this. Go to AskALawyer.com and actually talk to a live lawyer for $49. You can't beat it. Or, if you're doing your own legal research, they have an AI component that's trained on all the 50 states. So go to AskALawyer.com for all of your, pre-legal needs. And maybe you don't have a claim, but you think you do. Wouldn't you rather know that up front? And they can tell you. Or maybe you've got an incredible claim that you just don't really know what the next steps are. Go to AskALawyer.com. Same people that brought you eForms and eSign. It's a very solid company, very loyal sponsor for CLR. Okay, back to the news at hand. Okay, so you cross the border into this country and you start working. You're doing illegal things, right? But I mean, even if you're otherwise law-abiding. And the Trump administration is cracking down on the people who are crossing the border. But why are they coming here? Why are they coming here? They're coming here because people are willing to give them jobs. I mean, they're coming here because this is the land of milk and honey. Ain't a goddamn thing. That's funny. They will cross rivers. They will cross terrain. They'll do whatever they can to make a better life for their children. But recently in LA, in the Paramount area, they've seen intense protests against immigration and customs enforcement raids. So they're raiding everything. You saw we did a reaction to the judge who tried to let somebody go. I mean, I just think that was stupid, quite honestly. But, I've had a client, he was here legally, facing very serious criminal charges, and they deported him before he could have his trial. But he was here legally. The protests starting on June 6th have involved clashes between demonstrators and law enforcement, prompting strong responses from authorities. Due to the escalation, Trump has ordered the deployment of 2,000 National Guard soldiers to Los Angeles, with a deployment planned for June 7th to restore order amidst reports of no-go zones and significant disruption. Stephen Miller is now calling the anti-ICE uprising in Los Angeles an insurrection against the United States of America. The LA police have issued this statement. Today, demonstrations across the city of Los Angeles remained peaceful, and we commend all those who exercise their First Amendment rights responsibly. I'm sure they do. The Los Angeles Police Department appreciates the cooperation of organizers, participants, and community partners who help ensure public safety throughout the day. I have no problem with protesting. I think it's honestly a fucking waste of time. That's just me personally. And it can get out of hand. We were here when the George Floyd thing was going on, And oh my God, it was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare. So Paramount, California is erupting into chaos as federal agents are fighting back against a crowd of anti-deportation agitators. Flashbang and tear gas is deployed against them. So let's just take a look at this video. What I don't like about this is the potential for danger, the potential that somebody's going to get shot.
Shot, they didn't trampling people on horses, yo. They straight up purposely shot that lady.
See, look at that. I mean, oh, Snowflake got hurt. Little Snowflake. Oh, poor baby. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you should be. There's a less
Oh, it's
lethal,
not
not lethal. Pretty fucked up to have armed
I think
men
cops can go overboard
shooting
on this,
you and be like,
because
"Oh, Snowflake
just
got
like the
shot. What
protesters,
the hell? That's
people
insane."
get kind of a mob mentality, and all of a sudden, you know, they think that, you know, oh, I can do this, I can do that. We'll watch a video of the agent's perspective inside their vehicle as it's pelted with rocks while they attempt to leave the anti-ICE protest in Paramount, California. You can hear and see the windows and windshield breaking with each hit. The rocks broke clean through the windshield, leaving a gaping hole. Let's just check this out. Unbelievable.
How dare they throw rocks at y'all after y'all sat there and shot people for constitutionally protected activities? How dare they? Snowflakes.
You know, they have a tough job. Honestly, going into this danger, I wouldn't want to fucking do it. I'm a pussy. What can I say? God dang! And here's a picture of look at the picture of this car, or this, you know, vehicle. So Mexican nationals are waving a foreign Mexican flag and launch.
Why do you
deadly
think they're
explosives.
wearing masks and going in unmarked cars and stuff? You know, they know what they're doing. It's fucked up. They're like hiding their face because they're afraid of reprisals for what? Upholding the law. I don't remember any other officers having to do stuff like that. So, what's the difference here? You know, and it's like people are trying to purposely not answer that so they could stay on the side of the government. You know. And as a lawyer, their whole job is to protest. So, unfortunately, it feels like it's a waste of time.
This is at the police in Los Angeles. Check this out.
Like Biden kicked out more immigrants than Trump has, and yet during Biden's term, we didn't have this kind of bullshit.
Jesus.
Hey, did you see Glove? Whatever.
That is just crazy. You know, the thing about it is these cops, you know, they don't want to be there any more than you do. What I don't get is if you're out there protesting and you're peacefully protesting, great. Good for you. Get your message out there, you know. But if you are assaulting police, be expected to receive a very stern response, you know.
Well, it's like the police are civil servants. So if they're out there doing things that are outside the realm of law, then, you know, it's a question I've always asked. I mean, if you're being beaten by a police officer, do you have to accept that beating just because they're a police officer? It's not within their legal authority to do these things. Uh, the law says for those people to be there, they have to be there via the invitation of the governor. The president said, well, I can do whatever I want. I don't care about the law. So all those people, all the National Guard there are there unlawfully. And anything they do is unlawful. So if they're shooting you and they have body armor on and a squadron behind them and they're under unlawful conditions, I mean, what the hell is a citizen to do? Because we're supposed to protect our rights and our freedoms from enemies, foreign and domestic. And I think if you have unlawful combatants in your area shooting at you and your community, you know, that's a threat to the safety and freedom of the state and the community you're within.
I just can't believe it. One of the things about this immigration debate is that, I mean, these people don't come across here without something to go to. You know, they're not leaving little Mogadishu or leaving, you know, the Medellin cartel umbrella.
With Framer, the things you design become real. Framer feels like a design tool, but it ships fast, modern websites. You can start from scratch, import from Figma, or choose from thousands of free and premium templates. Framer's easy to learn. There's frames, text, and stacks. Combine them however you want, add whatever you want, and make everything responsive. Then the only thing left to do is hit publish. That's Framer.
You combed through every last piece of evidence. You made the final, impossible connection. And all the while, you were soaking in the bath. Audible. There's more to imagine when you listen.
To come to the United States where they're going to just be in equal poverty. They're coming here to flee violence and to flee poverty and to work. Is there an equal reaction to the employers who are employing, you know, people who are called illegals? I don't call them that anymore. You know, I had a case. My client had been here for 17 years, and he was charged with a crim sex matter because he was all of a sudden not doing what his girlfriend wanted him to do. His girlfriend wanted him to cook and clean, and he did that for years and years and years. Finally, he got tired of it. So then she made this allegation up, and I won the case in about 10 seconds. It was very easy to win. And he came to me and he says, look, this is what's going on here. And he told me the story, and I felt bad for him, and I felt grateful that I could represent him. Then I told the story to some other people, and I called him an illegal. I made that mistake of, and I didn't even know that was a bad thing back when this happened. And, you know, undocumented is what you're supposed to call them, right? Anyway, but I felt so, and now he's married to a U.S. citizen. He's here in this country legally, and he had been here crime free. He still doesn't have anything on his record. So the raids, you know, that they're raiding everything. You saw how many people they're taking people off the street who are supporting Gaza. They're taking people who are going to court off the street, because I've seen that happen personally. But the raids are targeted locations such as Home Depot, a garment factory, and warehouses resulting in the arrest of 44 immigrants on immigration violations. The operations were part of the Trump administration's broader strategy to deport record numbers and lock down the U.S.-Mexico border, with ICE aiming to arrest at least 3,000 immigrants per day. Give me a fucking break. You know, there's like 11 million here. You're not going to get rid of all these people during Trump's term. You're just not going to. So here's some footage of some of the raids.
So this is what's left.
Which
of
Dr.
our
Phil
work
is taking a part
We
of.
had
I
it
mean,
parked near the scene. Obviously, we got here right at the beginning before we knew it was going to escalate to the situation that it got to. This is a brand new news truck that we just got. Looks like the tires were slashed. They busted into the
And in case you can't see, it says fuck ICE.
windows. We'll see. They, our personal bags were in the car. They stole all the stuff that was inside.
the actual birth of America was a literal riot.
Cinder blocks through the window.
Now, I don't have any problem with a proper protest. I think you're
That is a
absolute
proper
right,
protest.
but I don't believe in destroying people's property.
Boston Tea Party.
That's
the
felony
birth of
level
America
shit
was
Here's a little bit
on
more footage
destroying
of that
people's
same
property,
type of
especially
shit.
slavers' properties.
Hey, todo está bien.
Straight murdered those people.
I'm not doing anything. Hey, why the fuck are you choking him, dog? Hey.
I mean, they're even picking up U.S. citizens for this.
Hey, he's choking him. He's choking him. Hey, look, hey. Hey, I'm not doing shit. Hey, I'm recording. Hey, it's all being recorded, pa. It's all being recorded. Dale, I'm not doing anything. I'm right here on the curb. What you gonna do? Nigga ain't put the fucking bags down. Niggas, you ain't gonna do shit. Hey, déjalo. Hey, just let it be. Déjalo, papa. Déjalo, papa.
I don't recommend you interfering with ICE like this. Look at that. I mean, it sucks to be a business owner with some of this stuff. So now here's the man with a Mexican flag circling a burning car during the anti-ICE unrest in Los Angeles, as President Trump demands Democratic leaders get the situation under control. I love how they say blue cities and red cities. Well, where are the Republicans? Jesus Christ.
Where are the Republicans? They're the ones in the body armor you do.
I think some people just love doing this shit. You know, they just. I remember when the George Floyd stuff came into town, there were people just looting just to loot. There were people that weren't even part of a legitimate protest that were just like stealing shit from a pharmacy.
That's part of a
lighting garbage cans on
protest.
fire.
It's the cost of society pays for illness in society. You knew this was coming. You knew what was going to happen when it came. Yet you press forward and act
I'm
surprised.
glad that ain't my car.
I can definitely feel the heat from that. Those tires are gonna start exploding soon.
Holy buckets, look at that. Better call your State Farm agent.
Like a good neighbor, we'll be there after the riots.
Unbelievable.
That's the most
so,
annoying thing
and
ever.
Trump, adds fuel to the fire. He says if Governor
Trump
Gavin
is
Newsom
the
of California and Mayor Karen Bass of Los Angeles can't do their job, which everyone knows they can't, then the federal government will step in and solve the problem. Riots and looters, the way it should be solved. Insurrectionists carrying foreign flags are attacking immigration enforcement officers, while one half of Americans' political leadership has decided that border enforcement is evil. Time to pass President Trump's beautiful bill and further. I don't really care about that. I mean, honestly, I don't think immigrants are evil, and they're not. But you are evil if you fuck with cops. I mean, you just are. And some cops are evil. Don't get me wrong. But there's a balance.
Some cops are evil.
Strike
they
it.
do unlawful.
So, and here's what Gavin Newsom had his response. The federal government is moving to take over the California National Guard and deploy 2,000 soldiers. The move is purposely inflammatory and will only escalate
Constitution
tensions.
is over.
LA authorities are able to access law enforcement assistance at a moment's notice. We are in close coordination with the city and county, and there is currently no unmet need. The Guard has been admirably serving LA throughout recovery. This is the wrong mission and will erode public trust. Borders. Oh, this guy's something. And I know I'm going to get backlash from people. When I talk badly about Trump or the Trump administration, but this guy just kills me. Borders are Tom Homan says National Guard are going into Los Angeles tonight. This is the way. Lawlessness will no longer be tolerated. We are taking our country back. You go, Tommy boy.
And, like I said many times, these elected officials or these non-government organizations, they can't cross the line either. I mean, we got people like, Hakeem Jeffries saying he's going to dox ICE employees. ICE agents out there with masks on. They're wearing masks to protect themselves and their families because they've been doxxed, their families been doxxed, their life's been threatened, their families have been threatened.
Their information is supposed to be public record.
1,000 protesters at my house. I expect that as the borders are, but these men and women are putting their lives online every day. They arrested a lot of bad people yesterday and today. They arrested child sex offenders. They arrested people convicted of robbery. They arrested...
There aren't that many pedophiles and rapists and, they're not 3,000 a day. Are they all fucking criminals? They're not all criminals.
Public safety, not only significant public safety threats, but national security threats. They arrested gang members. We're making Los Angeles safer. And Mayor Bass ought to be thanking us for making her city safer. And
you should thank me for all the explosions,
immigration issue
people
has
shooting.
To be dealt with, no question about it. So what do we have now? Now we have Border Patrol Black Hawk lands in LA with dozens of boxes of ammunition and weapons. I mean, do we really need this?
It's a surreal sight. This Black Hawk moved in just in the last few minutes from the Border Patrol, landing at that Homeland Security office on the Paramount side, right next to the Home Depot, and they are unloading this huge helicopter with, just boxes and boxes, dozens of boxes of ammunitions, less lethal weaponry. You see these tanks with flammable labels on the side, one after another, an entire shipment, as if they were getting ready for some kind of a major battle. It really has to be said, this is a remarkable sight in the middle of a suburban street here where they are just unloading all of these weapons, carts full of boxes and flammable weaponry. So you can see that it just made its own parking spot.
Unbelievable.
There in the parking lot
I mean,
of that Homeland Security
they're planning for war. Rioters are getting lit up like a Christmas tree with less lethal ammunitions. This is just the other night. Let's take a look at this clip. I remember when the George Floyd thing was going on, Michael was kind of going around filming stuff and taking pictures. But shit, I was so worried about him. And, you'd have to worry about anybody that's on the street. Fuck you. Jesus Christ. Have you got nothing better to do?
Very First Amendment.
Major Karen Bass says she's going to fight, defend illegals from ICE. We are going to fight for all Angelinos, regardless of when they got here, whether they have papers or not. We are a city of immigrants.
We are going to fight for all Angelinos, regardless of when they got here, whether they have papers or not. We are a city of immigrants, and this impacts hundreds of thousands of Angelinos.
Here's the thing. Illegal immigrants are not taking American jobs from American workers. We're at an all-time unemployment low. They're trying to get work themselves. Yeah, I mean, but are we going to deport 11 million people or round up these people? You're not going to do it without a fight like what we got going on here. One last Truth Social from Trump. Great job of the National Guard in Los Angeles. After 2 days of violence, clashes, and unrest, we have an incompetent governor. I'm not going to read it. I'm not going to read it. So where does that leave you if you are here undocumented? Well, you're taking your chances, right? You're absolutely taking your chances. Especially this administration is serious about cracking down. You're going to get charged. You can get charged with illegal entry, and then if you get charged again, there's mandatory minimum penalties. You're going to go to prison. You know, prison sometimes it would be better than going.
Gotta think of a way to
Medellin,
coordinate,
for example, or any other war-torn areas of El Salvador. I mean, fuck it. They just brought that guy back from El Salvador. Did you see that? So now they have him charged with, what is he charged with? Do we know? So they're charging him with transporting migrants across state lines, illegal migrants. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Governor DeSantis do that when he loaded a plane full of people up and sent him to Maine or somewhere up there to didn't the governor of Texas do the same thing when he put all these people on a bus and then into a plane, sent them to a blue state? I mean, it seems pretty hypocritical. And if you look at this, the feds have put out a little, seeking information kind of press release, assault on a federal officer and damage to government property. And look at, he's clear as fucking day there. When we had the George Floyd riots, I had 3 clients in that. One client was a girlfriend of a guy who torched some buildings. Another one was a client who owned a shop and was accused of shooting somebody, and he never got charged. And then another client was somebody who started a fire at another pawn shop, and which wound up killing somebody in the basement, and he wound up getting charged. It was just unbelievable. And you're going to see a bunch of prosecutions come out of this. And in the end, what are we doing? We have a lot of immigrants here. We're not going to deport them all. We're just not going to. You're not going to find them all. They'll go underground. God love these agents who are trying to do this work. It's dangerous work, actually, because especially if everybody's as dangerous as they say, going into a home that's got guns or, that's linked to the cartel. I'm all for getting rid of the cartel. I'm all for combating that in a militaristic way, because they're making the people's lives in Mexico terrible, right? Why do you think people are coming here? If Mexico was so great, if it was so, just peaceful and prosperous and everything it needs to be, you don't see people from Canada, sneaking in, say, hey, you want to get some blackjacks down in Minneapolis as we cross the border illegally? Yeah, sure, great. Sounds like a great idea, eh? You don't see that. You know why you don't see it? Because Canada is taking care of their people. I don't mean to be an expert on immigration, but there's all these unintended consequences. People are getting hurt. Federal agents are getting hurt. And I didn't see this huge reaction from Trump on January 6th. In fact, what did he do? He pardoned 1,500 people. Jesus Christ. It is what it is, and it's all in, elections have consequences, right? And this is one of their deals. So if you are an immigrant here, undocumented, get documented, get legal, do what you got to do things the right way. Otherwise, you're going to just get picked up and you're going to be taken out of this country with little or no due process. Because, Mr. Garcia got no due process. Well, now he's being charged federally, and we'll see what happens with his case. So we'll see you next time here in Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Make sure you subscribe. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Twitter. Sign up for Patreon. And if you have a woman as beautiful as the woman I have, and as nice as she is, oh my God, count your lucky stars. We'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts.
Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away.
At Granger, we're for the ones who pay attention to every little detail. The ones who fuss, tinker, and sweat the small stuff. Because you know the tiniest thing can make the biggest difference when it comes to keeping business moving. We get it. We're the same way, offering access to product experts to help you quickly and easily find what you need. So whatever your industry, you know you're always getting professional-grade products. Call, click Granger.com, or just stop by.
Oh, Lord, dude,
Granger,
stop it.
for the ones who get it done.
Donald Trump and Gavin Newsom take part in a classic game of phone tag. You know, the kind where one person blatantly lies about calling the other. This is just another day. Not long ago, Los Angeles was pretty much known for three things: palm tree-lined streets, show business, and performers who were, let's call it, show business adjacent. But over the last few days, there's been an addition to that list.
Some 4,000 National Guard troops are in Los Angeles now. At least 500 Marines have arrived. Last night, 113 people were arrested by local authorities, most for failure to disperse. This on top of weekend fires and vandalism. Federal immigration raids, which sparked protests and spasms of violence, will continue for at least a month in Los Angeles, authorities have said.
Well, look, if you have to create civil unrest by violently targeting immigrants and denying them due process, you can't beat the summer in LA. Now, one of the biggest issues surrounding Donald Trump's completely unnecessary and provocative escalation involving America's military is the fact that apparently he never consulted the governor of California. I mean, for a guy who loves states' rights almost as much as Matt Gaetz loves going to high school parties, it's a bit perplexing.
Well, under his executive order, it specifically notes, and under what the DOD did, is they had to coordinate with the governor of the state. They never coordinate with the governor of the state.
But I know you talked privately. Have you spoken in the last couple of days to the president about any of this?
Yeah, we talked for almost 20 minutes, and this issue never came up.
Come on, Governor. Maybe Trump just got a little shy. You know how he hates the sound of his own voice. But since that benign phone call on Friday, Donald Trump has circumvented Gavin Newsom's authority and federalized the National Guard, as well as sending in the Marines to Los Angeles. And this action by Trump isn't just at odds with the past 60 years of presidential norms, it's also at odds with Donald Trump.
We have laws. We have to go by the laws. We can't move in the National Guard. I can call insurrection, but there's no reason to ever do that, even in a Portland case. We can't call in the National Guard unless we're requested by a governor.
Yes, back in 2020, somewhere between the world still adjusting to working in our underwear over Zoom and the president telling us that a vial of Clorox could cure all our COVID woes, he went on TV and said that he couldn't possibly do the thing that he's doing right now. But as you'd imagine, he has a perfect explanation for all of that.
Why is this situation different to not consult with Governor Newsom about this?
Well, the biggest change from that statement is we have an incompetent governor. So I talked about governors, but I didn't talk about he's an incompetent governor. Look at the job he's doing in California.
See, it's not blatant hypocrisy because Trump's words only apply to competent governors. It's the same way he'd never stiff competent contractors on their bills and always respects competent election results. And Trump isn't the only one willing to tie themselves in self-proclaimed patriotic knots to justify their about-face on the issue of the National Guard. Here's Kristi Noem back in 2024.
Democrats have been encouraging this president. They've been encouraging President Biden to come after our states' rights. They've been talking about federalizing our National Guard, which would be the first time in American history that we would have a president that would pay soldiers to stand down, to actually not protect America. And if he's willing to do that and to take away my authority as governor, as commander-in-chief of those National Guard, boy, we do have a war on our hands.
That was then South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, back when she was willing to do whatever it took to defend the lives of anyone who wasn't her dog, expressing how terrible it would be for a president to go over her head and federalize the National Guard. And yet now,
I'm incredibly proud of the president for activating the National Guard and for sending in these Marines, because these Marines are specifically trained to meet the need that we have on the ground in LA right now. And Governor Newsom has done a disservice to the state of California for many years. The people there should never elect him into a leadership position ever again.
Wow, I didn't know that Kristi Noem was such a great athlete. If she keeps training, I'll bet she could grab gold in the 2020 Olympics for mental gymnastics. And Speaker Mike Johnson must have felt just a little left out today when he heard his friends were being blatant hypocrites, so he wanted to get in on the action. Here he is a few months ago describing those people recently pardoned for their actions on January 6th.
What was made clear all along is that peaceful protests and people who engage in that should never be punished. There was a weaponization of the Justice Department. There was a weaponization of the events.
So true. I hate it when people weaponize events that are completely harmonious and cordial. So peaceful. I feel like I'm at one of those tranquil spas with fruit-infused water where someone tries to smash their way in to take a shit on your desk. But, surprise, surprise, here's Mike Johnson today.
Is it hypocritical given the president pardoned the violent protesters on January 6th?
Look, no, I think there's a clear distinction between those two. We've seen what's happened in LA in the early 90s and then other times when these things get out of control and they burn whole city blocks down and shut the place down. You have to stay on top of that. You cannot let it get out of control.
Right, because if you let it get out of control, things could get peaceful. It is lie upon lie upon lie to justify everything they do. And not to get all old man here, but back in my day, we used to have a little thing called shame. You see, years ago, politicians used to live
what I'm making right now is a little kill zone. I'm going to teach them how to walk forward. So, in order to do that, I've got this little yellow circle, and it'll close in as the round goes. And so if they get outside of that little cylinder, it's going to kill them. So, right now, I'm trying to get them to walk forward, but they're mainly just standing up because they also get paid points to keep their head up. So that's all they're wanting to do. So this right here will hopefully help them decide to start moving forward. And what am I drinking is coffee. Drinking some yummy coffee with some milk and a little bit of sugar. I'm trying to reduce my amount of sugar. I'm right on the edge of being I am pre-diabetic last time I checked. So. And I'm sorry, I check the comments every once in a while. Sorry for me to stay focused because I don't have them right in front of my face. I got two monitors, but still don't have a good way to have it right in my face. I'm sorry. Not that I'm trying to ignore anybody.
Got to do a better job. He's doing a bad job.
Wow, seems like that could have been a quick text, but whatever. And within minutes of that statement, Governor Newsom responded to Trump's claim, tweeting, "There was no call, not even a voicemail." Huh. Well, this is why we have respected journalists like John Roberts from the vaunted Fourth Estate to get to the truth of what really happened between these two government officials.
President Trump contacted me from Air Force One on his way to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where he'll be in just a little while. He said the first call to Gavin Newsom was not picked up. The second call Gavin picked up. We spoke for 16 minutes. I told him to essentially, quote, and this is quoting the president, get his ass in gear and stop the riots, which were out of control more than anything else. This shows what a liar he is. Said I never called. So here is the evidence.
Uh-oh, Trump brought receipts.
And here is the call log that the president sent me from his phone. This was June the 7th. Now, granted, this was on Saturday. So that from the president, which says is proof that he spoke to Gavin Newsom early in the morning, our time, late at night, Friday night, would have been June 6th, I guess, in Los Angeles. So, Governor, over to you for the response.
No, he did respond when he said there was no call, not even a voicemail. Because according to Trump's very own call logs, a day ago, June 9th, there was no call, not even a voicemail. It didn't happen. John Roberts knows it didn't happen, by the way, but continues to play dumb on TV in an effort to keep his job on what is now essentially state-run television. And while this phone call might seem like small potatoes in the grand scheme of things, it's just one more instance of right-wing politicians not being held to account for their lies. Why would the President of the United States ever feel the need to own up to anything when just a phone call away is a hack journalist employed by a 24-hour kiss-ass-a-thon willing to peddle lies about another phone call? If I may borrow from the text message playbook of our current president, I'd like to send a quick text message to John Roberts. Before you go, if you enjoyed this content and you want to see more and support independent media, please subscribe to this channel. The subscribe button will be right here on the screen. But second, the reality is that we are now in a political environment where this administration can lean on any of the social media platforms to suppress certain voices if they don't like critical coverage. That means my longevity here is in the hands of a few tech billionaires who are already making it clear that they are willing to cater to this administration. To that end, signing up for my newsletter is a way for me to reach you directly if that ever becomes necessary. I'll put the link right here on the screen as well, so please sign up. It's free, but there's also an option to do a paid subscription if you'd like to support me and my team. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching. We all knew Donald Trump would bring us to war. We just didn't think it would be with Los Angeles. This is just another day. Last week, in a single day, Elon trashed Donald Trump's signature piece of legislation and called him a pedophile. Could have been a hat trick if he tweeted Trump's actual cognitive test results. But everybody knows that when Donald Trump is beset with bad news, there's only one place he'll turn: the distraction machine.
In Los Angeles, quiet streets have greeted the first of 2,000 National Guard troops sent by President Trump in response to 2 days of clashes between protesters and immigration officers. In a memo to the Pentagon and the Attorney General, Mr. Trump said he was acting under a rarely used law because the demonstrations constitute a form of rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States.
That's right. This weekend, there wasn't a rigged golf tournament big enough for Trump to have surprisingly one that would have served as enough of a distraction from last week's mess. He was so desperate to change the narrative that he first deployed ICE to carry out raids that he knew would cause chaos, and then deployed the National Guard to deal with the chaos that he ignited. Now, normally, when the President of the United States isn't a vindictive autocrat, they would coordinate with the governor of a state before sending the National Guard in. Normally.
California Governor Gavin Newsom, a Democrat, objected, saying on social media that the Guard's presence will escalate tensions and erode public trust.
Now, both Donald Trump and Governor Newsom knew exactly what would happen when the National Guard showed up. The difference is that just one of them was thrilled by it.
Another major flashpoint in front of the Federal Detention Center where undocumented immigrants captured by ICE are being held. In nearby Compton, chaos. Protests there dissolving into lawlessness, demonstrators upending roadblocks, setting off fireworks, while a small group of looters broke into a gas station.
Well, we're going to have troops everywhere. We're not going to let this happen to our country. We're not going to let our country be torn apart.
The president calling Governor Gavin Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass incompetent.
We'll send whatever we need to make sure there's law and order.
Wow, look at him projecting strength in the face of all that adversity that he created. This is like a firefighter wanting a parade in his honor for rescuing a cat that he threw in the fucking tree. From the moment Donald Trump fanned the flames by going around California's governor and federalizing the National Guard, he has been working his ass off to make sure that Americans forget that, one, he is conducting violent and unnecessary ICE raids on businesses across the city of Los Angeles, and two, that peaceful protests in reaction to those raids were ever taking place. Would someone looking to evoke calm tweet things like, paid insurrectionists, or looking really bad in LA, bring the troops? Don't think so. And Trump knows no matter what he does, his diehards will always be right there with him.
You know, one of our core principles is maintaining peace through strength. We do that on foreign affairs and domestic affairs as well.
National Guard soldiers are there to provide security for operations and to make sure that we have peaceful protests.
What we're seeing in LA are not advocates, we're seeing anarchists. And the President of the United States should absolutely put down the mob as soon as possible.
You see, now that Trump has created chaos, his cult members can go on TV and preach support for their guy to put down the mob like he's Elliot Ness. Only problem is, Trump is Capone, the corrupt guy who knows exactly how to game the system. Trump riled up protesters and got all the scary imagery he needed to make sure that not only everybody in America forgot his big beautiful bills on life support, and that he also might be a child molester, but also that there was ever any amount of peaceful protests in LA to begin with. As a result of Trump's actions, every single news organization has turned into a 24/7 flaming Waymo broadcast, And that was Trump's plan all along, to distract the nation and bill himself as America's savior, and maybe even carve out a little place in the history books.
I have a little statement. They say, they spin, we hit.
Quick history lesson here. Trump is attempting to echo the words of Walter Headley, Miami's chief of police in the 1960s, who wasn't just known for his racism, but also for coining the term, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Trump is so desperate to find himself in the history books alongside the most virulent racists of our past that he cooked up his very own Timu version of Walter Headley's quote. And by the way, our police and military are billed as the most lethal fighting force on the face of the earth, and you make their red line a little spittle? Why does our law enforcement have a lower threshold for pain than the front row at a performance of Hamilton?
And now, don't change the subject.
But, just like Hamilton, when it came to painting himself as America's only hope, Donald Trump was not throwing away his shot.
Because we have to make sure there's going to be law and order. You had a disaster happening. It's lucky for the people in Los Angeles and in California that we did what we did. We got it just in time. It's still simmering a little bit, but not very much.
Still simmering, but not very much. Donald Trump talks about LA like he's grilling it on a barbecue. And that level of dismissiveness is not an accident. Trump didn't just create a fight with the city of Los Angeles, he did so with California's governor, because through relentless MAGA messaging, he's been able to turn California, and in turn Gavin Newsom, into public enemy number one.
He's an incompetent governor. Look at the job he's doing in California. He's destroying one of our great states. He should only be happy I sent in the military, because if I didn't send them in, you would have had a problem there, the likes of which we haven't seen in a long time.
Could you imagine how bad it could have been? That's right, instead of cars on fire, Angelenos could have had to deal with regular LA traffic. So now Governor Newsom and the President of the United States are trading barbs, with Trump even going so far as endorsing the idea of his border czar Tom Homan arresting Newsom. But look, in fairness, I've always maintained that no one is above the law. If a politician commits a crime, then they should be held to account for it. So if Trump is endorsing the idea of having Newsom arrested, then clearly this crime must be egregious. So what are we talking here? Bribery, conspiracy, fraud?
A crime has he committed? I think his primary crime is running for governor, because he's done such a bad job.
So Gavin Newsom should get arrested for, quote, doing a bad job, but Trump thinks being convicted by a literal jury is a con job? Got it. Look, this is the billionth time I've uttered this sentence, but nevertheless, it remains just as true. This is not normal. It is frighteningly easy to become desensitized to the countless overreaches and distractions by this administration, but that is their goal. The constant onslaught of messaging that makes you forget your own name, that is the plan. They don't keep reiterating this phrase because they think it actually sounds good.
The one big beautiful bill.
One big beautiful bill.
Big beautiful bill.
They say it because they want those words to haunt your dreams. Trump put as much thought into his slogan for the big beautiful bill as Ford Motor Company did a decade ago when they arrived at Drive One. I mean, what came second in that world-class marketing meeting? Give us money for a car we made? But the king issues his decree and his minions fall in line. The same way Trump wanted to distract from his shitty week, so his stooges made it so. Federalizing the National Guard to quell a riot that he's inciting is no more normal than deporting people without due process, targeting law firms you disagree with, or destroying federal agencies funded by Congress. And the moment this president feels he's losing the narrative, he will do whatever it takes to create a distraction. And when you're losing something, creating a distraction to pretend that you're not always works. Always. 100% of the time. Now, to be fair, this is not the first time that a sitting president federalized the National Guard, but it's been a minute.
This is the first time since 1965 in Alabama, the civil rights era, that a president has activated a state's National Guard force without a request from that state's governor.
In 1965, President Lyndon B. Johnson federalized the National Guard to protect peaceful protesters at the hands of racists who opposed voting rights for people of color. And if you're wondering what Trump was doing while LBJ was protecting black people from committing the atrocity of trying to take part in our electoral process, our current president was working for his father at one of his segregated properties. Donald Trump's distractive and destructive actions are racism and authoritarianism in plain view. It's a desperate plea to change the narrative, all disguised as some noble attempt at protecting law and order. If this guy is willing to not just allow one of America's most iconic cities to descend into violence, but to incite it, then that should serve as all the proof you need that he will destroy anything and everything for a cheap political win. He would faster burn this country down to the ground than suffer the indignity of one bad news cycle of his own making. There is nothing he won't sacrifice in his desperation to protect himself, his power, and his ego. Trump wants Los Angeles to burn so he can continue to bill himself as America's hero, but his malevolence is crystal clear. We won't tolerate his tactics, and we even have our own hero when it comes to putting out Trump's flames.
Larger than what it's
Before you go, if you enjoyed this content and you want to see more
actually using a
please subscribe to this channel. The subscribe button will be right here on the screen. But second, the reality is that we are now in a political environment where this administration can lean on any of the social media platforms to suppress certain voices if they don't like critical coverage. That means my longevity here is in the hands of a few tech billionaires who are already making it clear that they are willing to cater to this administration. To that end, signing up for my newsletter is a way for me to reach you directly if that ever becomes necessary. I'll put the link right here on the screen as well, so please sign up. It's free, but there's also an option to do a paid subscription if you'd like to support me and my team. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching.
Choose to lean into it. Every Mazda is engineered to give you effortless control.
I wake up.
This is Democracy Watch. Mark, you and I and the rest of the political world have spoken a lot about Paul Weiss. That's the law firm that capitulated. We have some major news here as it relates to a couple of partners from Paul Weiss that really caught my eye. Can you explain what just happened?
Yeah, so a big development. 4 senior partners at Paul Weiss, all litigators, sent a notice to the firm saying they're leaving and they are starting their own law firm. One of them was actually the co-chair of the litigation department, someone who, by the way, was involved in the original signing off of the deal. I don't think she negotiated or had anything to do there, but was involved in selling it internally. But I think that that Paul Weiss as an institution underappreciated just how badly this was all going to land and how long it was going to be around. I mean, Paul Weiss has sort of itself in now to a punchline. I've even heard Paul Weiss used as a verb, which is not good for a law firm.
Yeah.
But
it's not good for anybody when you've been turned into a verb. Nothing good comes out of that.
Yeah, but these 4 partners are leaving, setting up their own firm, and according to reports, among other things, they want to be able to sue Donald Trump and his administration.
And so what does this do in terms of the reputation of Paul Weiss itself? I mean, I'm not, in the legal world. Does a firm come back from this? And Paul Weiss, if I'm not mistaken, was known for actually being pretty liberal, if I'm not mistaken. And so does that reputation get shed immediately?
So this is, I think, part of why this is harming Paul Weiss so much. In some respects, Brian, this is not unlike what the Washington Post went through,
right?
Which is that, here was a publication that said, democracy dies in darkness and had built a bit of a reputation as sort of pro-democracy. And then, of course, it does all the terrible things that it did under the direction, or at least to try to please its owner. And Paul Weiss is kind of like in that same thing, which is that if you had asked anyone, a year ago, what is the most liberal law firm in New York of all the big law firms, they would have said Paul Weiss. If you had said, what is the law firm most prominently associated with raising money for and otherwise being involved in the Biden campaign, the Clinton campaign, the Obama campaign, Democratic politics, everyone would have said Paul Weiss, right? Paul Weiss was seen as sort of part of the liberal legal establishment. It was very active in pro bono work for liberal causes. Its chairman, Brad Karp, was an outspoken advocate for Joe Biden, an outspoken advocate for using litigation to fight hate. The law firm brought litigation against the right-wing hate groups in Charlottesville. And so that's the reputation. And then, like the Washington Post, what happens is when you then pivot to a more Trump-friendly posture, like you are kind of neither fish nor fowl, right? The conservatives still don't accept you, right, because you're not, and you have lost all credibility with your natural supporters. So that is, I think, what has happened to Paul Weiss in kind of the larger culture sphere. what's interesting about these 4 partners who are leaving is these are among the partners who have been involved in representing some of the largest corporate litigation matters that law firm has had. They represented Google, for example, in the most recent antitrust case. So there will be economic consequences to Paul Weiss from these departures. I'm not saying it's going to crater the firm, but it is a big blow to the image of the firm, and I think really importantly, a big blow to the proposition that Paul Weiss and the other law firms were selling, which is, oh, this may be a bit odious, but it's good for business.
Right.
It doesn't right now look like this was very good for Paul Weiss's business.
And that's what I want to dig into, because this whole thing was done in service of, okay, what's the path of least resistance? What can we do that's gonna make things hurt the least? But in fact, by virtue of them doing this, yes, they might have, staved off some momentary pain by the Trump administration, pain that, by the way, likely would have been blocked in the courts. But now they're actually seeing their own clients engage in this mass exodus away. And so is it fair to assume that really the benefit that they derived from trying to stay on Donald Trump's good side is far outweighed by the negative consequences, both reputationally and the fact that they're losing actual business, actual dollars?
Yeah, I think Paul Weiss made 4 errors. So let's just run through them real quick. The first is they assumed that they could make a deal with Donald Trump and that it wouldn't mean anything. So I think part of the reason why this has really hurt them is every time Donald Trump comes forward and says, "Oh, well, maybe maybe I will use those law firms to represent coal companies.
Right.
Maybe we'll use those law firms to represent,
everyone.
police officers in brutality, in misconduct cases." Right. Like that's number one. Number two, it has hurt. They miscalculated that that clients wouldn't care. And we have seen instances now of some clients, not necessarily directly with Paul Weiss, but at least in one instance, it appears a client left another one of the big firms and went to one of the firms that was fighting instead. Number three, I think they thought it wouldn't affect personnel, and that's why this is such a big deal. This is a big deal because these are big partners, very important partners in Paul Weiss. And it shows that there is a portability to the lawyers who don't agree with what Paul Weiss and other firms like them are doing, and that they'll leave.
Yeah.
They will just leave. And by the way, note they're not going to a law firm. They're starting their own firm. So in some ways, this is also sort of a larger indictment of big law's overall complicity in this. And then the last one, and we got a taste of it this week in a court decision involving the law firm Jenner and Block. Jenner and Block was one of the law firms targeted with an executive order. It fought back and it won, and it just received a final injunction blocking the Trump executive order permanently. And in that order, you would at this point come to expect the judge takes a shot at Paul Weiss. Right. The judge not only rules in favor of Jenner and says that Jenner, was wronged by the Trump administration, but actually points out the capitulation by Paul Weiss, points out, the deal they made, and actually quotes some of the terms that Donald Trump has laid out. And so Paul Weiss is also losing with the very judges and the judiciary. We've now had a series of judges in cases involving other law firms call out Paul Weiss. Well, I mean, if you're a client, the whole theory Paul Weiss had was if you're a client, you want to hire a law firm that's not going to be on the bad side of the administration. Well, I'll tell you what, if you're hiring a law firm, you don't want to be on the wrong side of judges.
Yeah.
Except the judges are expressing real apprehension about what the Paul Weisses of the world have done. That seems to me to be a even more long-lasting problem that law firm may wind up having.
Well, as it relates to that Jenner case, I mean, that is the whole basis of what Trump was trying to do. So if Trump's whole bending these law firms over the barrel to try to get what he wants, to try to extract something from them, if that was inherently illegal and doesn't stand up to legal muster, then what is Paul Weiss left with? That they won't be on the receiving end of some mean tweets by Trump? Like if the things that he used to extort the law firms isn't going to stand by virtue of these the rulings in these cases, then what did Paul Weiss get out of all of this?
Yeah, I think what it got was a sullied reputation, and what most people who think they can make a deal with Donald Trump is.
Right, which is at the end of the day just thrown under the bus. It just never. I mean, the extent to which it never works out for the other person in this transactional relationship cannot be overstated.
Yeah, but what we continue to see, and which just I marvel at, these billionaire businessmen are supposed to be super smart and savvy. And yet, look at Tim Cook and Apple. The guy gave $1 million to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is now targeting Apple.
Right.
Okay. The law firm, supposed to be super smart. I mean, they're the ones who the billionaires go to for savvy negotiations. And look at what these law firms have done. I mean, who the hell wants to hire a law firm if this is their negotiating strategy? If this is how they come out, and so you're just kind of left scratching your head, Brian. How is it that so many people who are supposed to be really smart think they're the ones who can make a deal with Donald Trump and come out smelling like a rose?
Right. You and I have spoken about this at length, and so I'm curious from your vantage, how important is it for folks to continue talking about not just Paul Weiss specifically, but what Paul Weiss represents, which is this idea of capitulation to Trump? How important is it to continue to talk about this stuff as a way to disincentivize other people, whether it's lawyers, whether it's tech billionaires, whether it's media outlets, whoever it may be, so that they don't follow in the same footsteps and give Donald Trump more power by virtue of capitulating to him?
Yeah, I think it's vital. I mean, look, I had a lot of friends who were at Paul Weiss. I have some friends who still are at Paul Weiss, and I shake my head. I mean, I don't know what the hell they're still doing there. Anyone with dignity and self-respect should be leaving that firm, or any of the others that are capitulating. But it is important to continue to point out what that law firm in particular did, because it was the first. It was the first, and it was also the firm with the closest connections to Democrats, and the one that you cannot say did not understand the threat that Donald Trump posed.
Right.
I mean, you cannot go back to what the partners of that law firm were saying when Joe Biden was in office, when they thought Joe Biden would win, and square it with what they did here. And they need to suffer the consequences of a cautionary tale, not just to the rest of the legal industry, not just to the universities, not just to the media companies, but to any large institution that thinks it can make a deal. And, it's a shame that it comes at the expense of what is one of the oldest law firms in New York. It comes, frankly, it's a difficult situation for me and for many other Jewish lawyers, because this is a law firm that had storied history in the city as the first law firm that would hire both Jews and non-Jews. It was a bastion of progressive integration through its history, and took on a lot of great causes. But, when it made its deal with Donald Trump, it is important that it be held accountable and it be held out as an example, which is why I know you continue to bring it up. It's why I continue to write about it on Democracy Docket. And it's, frankly, I think the reason why it's become very sticky. There's not a lot of stickiness around a lot of the capitulations. You probably, if you're watching this video, you probably can't name another one of the 9 or 10 law firms that capitulated, but Paul Weiss, and it's because of that history. It's because of who they were. It's because they were first. It's because they could have sued, and they would have won.
Right.
That they are getting all of the negative publicity they are.
Right. And look, you have been a leader in terms of not just talking about this and pushing back publicly, but with what you're doing with your team and your firm in terms of standing up to this administration and not even venturing into the ballpark of capitulation. I think that is so important, especially in light of what we're seeing right now. So one small step that we can all take, everybody watching, is to help elevate Mark's voice, elevate his team's voice by subscribing to their YouTube channel, Democracy Docket. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Mark Elias.
This is Democracy Watch. This is Democracy Watch. Mark, we have some breaking news here as it relates to Donald Trump's ongoing attempt to get a bunch of law firms to capitulate. This order was challenged in court by another law firm. Can you explain what just happened?
Yeah, Donald Trump is now 0 for 3. Okay, so Donald Trump issued a series of executive orders against large law firms. First one against Perkins Coie, mostly because I had been a former partner there. Perkins Coie sued, and they won. He then issued one against Jenner and Block, a big Chicago firm. They sued, and they won. And now Wilmer Hale, a big Washington, D.C. firm that had been also targeted by Donald Trump, mostly because Bob Mueller, the former special counsel, had been a partner there. They sued, and they won. And what's really astounding in all of these orders is just
how clear-eyed the judges are that what Donald Trump has done is both illegal, unconstitutional, and outrageous.
And I want to dig into that exact thing. So I'm going to put an excerpt from the order right here on the screen. Taken together, the provisions constitute a staggering punishment for the firm's protected speech, exclamation point. The order is intended to, and does in fact, impede the firm's ability to effectively represent its clients, exclamation point. And in fact, there are 25 exclamation points throughout this entire ruling handed down by the judge. And so how unusual is it for a judge to kind of convey this kind of this kind of language in their rulings?
Oh, I think it's unprecedented. I mean, I can't think off the top of my head of a judicial order that has included more than one exclamation point. I mean, the fact is, judicial decisions are usually quite measured. They are usually written in a way that suggests there is a good faith dispute between the parties, that the judge is weighing each side, and then coming down with a ruling. That is not at all how this ruling reads. And it's, by the way, not how any of the prior ones have read either. This judge is angry. This judge is, beyond frustrated that the legal system itself is under attack, that the rule of law is under attack, and that these are not close questions. And, this is doing no favors for Donald Trump. It's doing no favors for Pam Bondi or the Department of Justice, that they continue to show up in judges' courtrooms and making arguments that the judges don't just find wrong, don't just find illegal, but find outrageous that they're even being offered.
To that point, I do want to put another section from the judge's ruling on the screen here. The cornerstone of the American system of justice is an independent judiciary and an independent bar willing to tackle unpopular cases, however daunting. The Founding Fathers knew this. Accordingly, they took pains to enshrine in the Constitution certain rights that would serve as the foundation for that independence. Little wonder that in the nearly 250 years since the Constitution was adopted, no executive order has been issued challenging these fundamental rights. And so I guess the same question here applies. What is the judge trying to say by offering up what seems to me, and I think you would agree here, some pretty aggressive pushback against what this administration is doing? I think pretty unprecedented pushback against what this administration is doing.
Yeah, look, I'm going to go on record. If this was a different administration, if we had a legacy media that approached Donald Trump the way they have approached every other president, this decision would kick off a political firestorm. It would kick off talk of impeachment against Donald Trump, because over the course of now 3 judicial decisions, and almost certainly a 4th one is on its way in the last one of these cases, these judges have said that Donald Trump's actions are not just illegal. They don't just footfault over. They are grossly illegal. They are unprecedentedly illegal. They are an affront to the Constitution. And, my question back to you, Brian, is where is the legacy media over this? I mean, I just got to say, I just lived through 2 weeks of, infomercials for Jake Tapper's book running on the legacy media. And God bless them, I understand they want to sell books, but I think at one point he said that Joe Biden being president or running for re-election might be a bigger scandal than Watergate. Well, by that standard, this is the biggest scandal in American history, then, that he issued these executive orders against these law firms. And good for the judges for standing up.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I would offer as an answer to that is that the media kind of bakes into the cake Trump's corruption. And so long as he just meets that low bar that he set for himself, which is that he's going to engage in corruption, he's going to issue illegal and unconstitutional executive orders, this is the kind of stuff he's going to traffic in. So long as he doesn't surprise anybody, then they're not going to cover it in any way the same way that a Democrat would. This is the whole, man bites dog, right? That's surprising. That's going to get people to pay attention. But nothing that Donald Trump is doing is surprising, because we've just come to accept the fact that he is going to traffic in this kind of corruption. That shouldn't mean that the media absolves him. Yes, it means that we're not surprised when he does it, but that doesn't mean that you absolve him when he's in the midst of it. And yet that's what we're seeing right now. I don't know whether it's because, the billionaire owners of these outlets are too afraid to get on his bad side because they have other interests in front of the White House. I don't know whether it means that they're afraid of some retribution in some other way, or if they're just not getting the clicks that they need by virtue of focusing on stuff that's really going to hold Trump's feet to the fire. But look, all of that underscores the need for people like you, and I know that you just started your YouTube channel, Democracy Docket, which I watch on a daily basis now. Highly recommend for everybody watching to elevate the voices that we need to elevate right now, which include Marks and his teams. Please subscribe to Democracy Docket. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Let's help build up this progressive media ecosystem. Doesn't cost you anything to subscribe. Just hit the subscribe button. Mark, I wanted to the fact that we still do have these law firms like Paul Weiss is the one that we've spoken about the most, which did opt to capitulate. And so now we're in the third case where Trump's executive order
When your business needs fast.
Welcome back. President Trump says anyone who protests at the military parade in Washington on Saturday will be met with very heavy force. He said that speaking to reporters in the Oval Office yesterday, issuing this warning.
We're going to be celebrating big on Saturday. We're going to have a lot of, and if there's any protester who wants to come out, they will be met with very big force. By the way, for those people that want to protest, they're going to be met with very big force. And I haven't even heard about a protest. But, you know, this is people that hate our country, but they will be met with very heavy force.
So it's a feature, not a bug. Saturday's parade estimated to cost around $45 million, marking both the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army, but also Trump's 79th birthday. Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Jake Auchincloss of Massachusetts. Congressman, there's a lot of parallels that you're seeing between your experience having been in the Marines, serving at 29 Palms, training there. That's exactly what Marines on the ground in California are doing right now. I mean, what's your sense of the situation that we're watching in LA?
It's an authoritarian power grab. This president is manufacturing a crisis, claiming that Los Angeles is in, quote, rebellion, which is absurd, in order to test the bounds of his power over the military, and more precisely, to use the military as a police force. And right now, I'm thinking, Ali, not just of Los Angeles and the fact that it could be Chicago or Boston next. I'm also thinking about these Marine officers in 29 Palms. I trained there for 2 years. I was in command of an infantry platoon. Those boys are trained to be lethal. 29 Palms is the elite training ground for the United States.
There you go, little buddy.
Training to destroy the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps in Syria or to fight off the People's Liberation Army in Guam. They are not trained to do de-escalation with fellow citizens in Los Angeles, nor is it necessary. The California state and local authorities are well equipped to uphold public order. If I were a Marine officer there, some first lieutenant, I'd be looking at this executive order and saying, I don't think it's lawful, but a judge hasn't ruled on it yet. And I'm put in this impossible situation of either disobeying what I have to at least presume is a lawful order until a judge rules otherwise, or going against my instincts on the Constitution. And that is such an unfair situation to put these young men and women in. And it's why Congress needs to act to reform these 19th century laws that give the president way too much latitude over posse comitatus.
Yeah, and that Latin phrase, I think, is one that we might hear a little bit more frequently. But for viewers who don't speak Latin, why is it relevant here?
There's basically two laws that are governing this situation. The first is posse comitatus. The law is from the 19th century, but the principle goes all the way back to the Magna Carta. And it basically says the president generally can't use the military as a police force. And that's a really good idea. We have 1,000 years of history that say, yeah, you don't want your executives to use the military as a police force. But there's exceptions to that law, and the Insurrection Act are basically the list of exceptions. And they are way too broad, and they are very poorly drafted. And Congress needs to get in there and say there's basically only two scenarios that you're allowed to use the military as a police force. Number one should be an insurrection, like the Civil War. It's worth noting, by the way, that when we actually had an insurrection on January 6th, President Trump refused to call in the National Guard.
I think that parallel is well underscored here.
Yeah, not trying to defend cops on Capitol Hill, but he is trying to beat up citizens in Los Angeles, right? Number two is if a class of citizens are being systemically deprived of their constitutional rights. So think about the civil rights era in the 1960s. The president federalized the National Guard to desegregate the schools.
Yeah.
Those are two exceptional scenarios. This does not qualify.
It also comes against the backdrop of a parade that we were talking about at the very start of the segment that's going to be happening here in Washington, D.C., that happens to coincide with the president's birthday, but is actually for the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army. It feels, and we started the show talking about this, like this week is meant to project the optics of Trump as someone who has the military at his fingertips, because he is, of course, commander-in-chief.
It's an expensive birthday party for an overgrown toddler. And it's an irony that I'm sure is lost on him, but the United States Army was born out of the Continental Army under George Washington. And one of the reasons that George Washington is such an important founding father for us is that he actually refused to use the military for political ends. His officers came to him in 1783 and said, "We want you to usurp the Confederation Congress. We're sick of them." People hated Congress then too. And he said, no.
Some things don't change.
In the Newburgh Address, he said, "I won't do it. I respect civilian authority over the military." One of the great moments in the history of Western democracy, and this president, who of course doesn't understand that history, is trampling upon that tradition.
We've also seen some Republicans, including the perennial vulnerable California Republican David Valadao, saying that he has some concerns about the ICE enforcements that we're seeing on the ground that are the root of this kind of action that we're seeing in Los Angeles County. Do you think that that concern could be parlayed into something legislative that could either close some of the loopholes that you're talking about or lead to something a little bit more comprehensive on the immigration front? Or for people watching who say, well, hope is dead for that, are they right?
Hope is not dead. This is the authoritarian playbook, is testing the bounds of your power. You see it in the democratic backsliding in Latin America and Europe, where would-be strong men are saying, can I get away with this against this judge? Can I get away with this against the media? Can I get away with this with the military? And public pressure does matter. And when public pressure says no, and the authoritarian pulls back, they deplete their political capital and they become weaker, which is why these peaceable demonstrations against what the president is doing are critical. We need to see sustained public pressure, not just in blue cities and states, but in Republican districts, making clear to these members of Congress, we are going to hold you to account to uphold the Constitution. You swore an oath to the Constitution, not to Donald Trump.
Yeah, and our colleague Rachel Maddow has done an exceptional job of highlighting those protests. Even if they are small in number, they are popping up in interesting places from a political landscape. So I think this is one that we need to watch. And we're coming into the weekend where there's going to be those No Kings protests throughout the country in opposition to the military parade that we're going to see here in Washington, D.C. Democratic Congressman Jake Auchincloss of Massachusetts, thank you for your perspective.
Things were a little bit quieter in Los Angeles, at least in terms of the protests, not in terms of ICE raiding schools, arresting people at courts, whatnot. I mean, they are ongoing. We have more military coming in, despite the fact that California is now suing the federal government for its federalization of the National Guard. Here is Pete Hegseth. He is at the House Oversight Subcommittee on Defense. This is just a coincidence. I mean, he was due to testify in front of these committee hearings, both this and I believe in part because of the budget stuff that they're working on, but also just sort of in the due course of things. He's going to be talking to a couple other committees this week.
This is the second time this has happened. Don't you remember when Tulsi Gabbard was in front of it was a coincidental hearing, and that's when Signalgate had just broken, I believe?
Yes. Now, we don't have any clips of Hegseth being asked yet about his own Signalgate. And then the subsequent NSA spying gate that was associated in who they fired for supposedly leaking about his use of Signal. And it turns out that there was an internal lie about whether they had been wiretapped. We will have those clips for you likely tomorrow. In the meantime, here is Hegseth explaining the circumstance where he feels he can send in the military under what circumstances. And understand, people have been saying this for a long time. This is playing out very much like the
I get so tired.
People who have been concerned about Trump's authoritarianism and fascism said. I mean, really, since the day that Pete Hegseth was nominated, people said the reason why Trump is doing this is because Esper in his first term and the generals were reluctant to put military on the streets in the United States to attack civilians. And the other piece of speculation was that this is the way they were going to do this. They were going to go in, they were going to do mass roundups of people, of undocumented immigrants, of documented immigrants, of immigrants who are in the process of seeking documentation, people who have been in this country for, in some instances, decades, a whole raft of people who are not citizens. Now, citizens have been swept up because they made the mistake of going around being all Latino.
Right.
But, and not only citizens of this country, but people who are visiting were accidentally, because they also made the mistake. I saw this in New York just the other day, making the mistake of speaking Spanish and looking Latino can get you swept up by ICE
in New York City.
In New York City,
this level of bigotry is just really horrible, and I think about all our Latino friends, brothers, and sisters who walk around with fear or walk around with their papers or they can't speak Spanish in public. It's disgusting what this country is doing to you right now.
Now, to be fair, they've also rolled up a couple of white immigrants. So, they're
Middle Eastern immigrants.
Oh, yes. I mean, of course. I mean, everybody who's brown is definitely high on the list. But they have rolled up a couple of, I think, of European immigrants, etc. But here's Pete Hegseth trying to justify the military being deployed. And again, this is without the ask of any California officials, not the governor, not the mayor of LA, not the police commissioner of LA. In fact, they're suing to have them leave, whether it's the federalization of the National Guard or the Marines.
This is Pete Hegseth with Pete Aguilar of California.
Exactly what we're doing, and we're proud to do it. We're proud to do it. 10 U.S.C. of the U.S. Code 12406 as a legal basis that the president used cites 3 examples and circumstances for the Guard: invasion by a foreign nation, rebellion or dangerous rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States, or the president is unable with regular forces to execute the laws of the United States. Which authority is triggered here to justify the use?
I don't know. You just read it yourself, and people can listen themselves, but it sounds like all 3 to me. If you've got millions of illegals and you don't know where they're coming from, they're waving flags from foreign countries and assaulting police officers and law enforcement officers.
All right, pause it. Go back. I want people to listen to these three things that he's saying, have been these 3 elements of the threshold that have supposedly been surpassed. Invasion by a foreign nation. I mean, we know what an invasion is. We know what a foreign nation is. It's a nation, right?
Yeah.
Like, we used to have a problem. We used to have a fear in this country of non-state actors, terrorists who would attack, who were non-state actors. That didn't mean that they didn't have a nationality. It meant that they were acting on their own. So there was a time in this country where we understood that you could be from a country but not be the country.
Right.
When it came to national security. Apparently, that's no longer the case.
But California used to be part of Mexico, so actually, if you think about it, it's been invaded since it was.
Yes, I mean, that's all true. But those folks who have come from Mexico, or parents who had come from Mexico, or grandparents who had come from Mexico, represent an invasion by Mexico no more than I represent an invasion of Vilnius, Lithuania, of this country.
I'm invading from Finland and Norway, and we're coming for you, folks.
And you guys are known for this.
Oh, my gosh. We have a history. It's in our DNA. It's the whole Viking thing. I mean, you should measure my skull, see if I'm eligible for deportation.
A rebellion against the government.
Right.
The LAPD represent the Los Angeles government. We have heard from the mayor of Los Angeles. We have heard from the commissioner of the LAPD. We have heard from the governor of California. If they were not aware of a rebellion against them, maybe there's no rebellion. And the president unable with regular forces to execute the laws. 50, 75 people have been arrested by the LAPD for violent acts during the protest. In some instances, not even violent acts, just, standing in front of a car, which is a non-violent act unless you're getting hit by the car, which we've seen. But let's hear these again, because Hexus says all three.
That the president used cites three examples and circumstances for the Guard: invasion by a foreign nation, rebellion or dangerous rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States, or the president is unable with regular forces to execute the laws of the United States. Which authority is triggered here to justify the use?
I don't know. You just read it yourself, and people can listen themselves, but it sounds like all three to me. If you've got millions of illegals and you don't know where they're coming from, they're waving flags from foreign countries and assaulting police officers and law enforcement.
Pause it. I'm sorry again. Who are the millions of illegals waving flags? Is that what we're supposed to believe? Is that A, there's been millions of people on the street in LA and that they're all illegals?
I mean, if you're waving an Israel flag, I'm imagining that this applies to you, right? You can't be waving foreign flags in the United States of America.
Do people wave the Israeli flag in New York? Is that
in New York? I've seen a few. I'm going to report them to ICE.
I'm being facetious.
I know.
Go ahead.
I mean, Irish flags, Italian flags, all around here.
Confederate flags, some places.
Yeah, good point.
Here to justify the use.
I don't know. You just read it yourself, and people can listen themselves, but it sounds like all three to me. If you've got millions of illegals and you don't know where they're coming from, they're waving flags from foreign countries and assaulting police officers and law enforcement officers, that's a problem.
The laws of the United States?
No, the governor of California is unable to execute the laws of the United States.
The president, you said all three apply.
The governor of the California has failed to protect his people, along with the mayor of Los Angeles, and so President Trump has said he will protect our agents, and our Guard and Marines are proud to do it.
The law also says, Mr. Secretary, that the orders for these purposes shall be issued through governors of the states.
You and I both know that President Trump has all the authorities necessary, and thankfully he's willing to do it on behalf of the citizens of Los Angeles, on behalf of our ICE agents, and behalf of our country.
We've also
got him there. I mean, that wasn't the question where he said that the governor is unable to faithfully execute the laws. That's not the threshold. That's what applies to the president. That's supposed to be able to give him this authority. There's just there's some confusion a little bit about the laws that are being used here, and I just want people to be clear about this. They haven't yet invoked the Insurrection Act, which seems to be something that they're openly teasing, but it's more of like a break glass in case of an emergency situation, because that would supersede the Posse Comitatus Act that we spoke about yesterday, which was like a Reconstruction era law that prevented the United States like military from federal military force from doing civilian law enforcement. But you can supersede that if you are going to invoke the Insurrection Act. Now, that would have applied to the active duty troops that Hegseth had tweeted out that they were going to deploy. If Trump invoked this thing called 10 U.S.C. 12406, that allows him to federalize the Guard, and typically you ask for the input of the governor, but you don't have to, as LBJ did in 1965 when he was trying to protect civil rights marchers. So Trump did it for the first time since then, but he hasn't gone all the way to invoke the Insurrection Act, which would be a huge escalation, and also would be difficult for them legally because they have to prove that there's an invasion and this is wartime for him to execute the Insurrection Act.
And my understanding is, and I'm not sure that what the specifics were in which LBJ under that authority federalized the National Guard to protect the marchers, or as much as federal authorities who were with the marchers. Because my understanding is that under that, the law you cited, the federal troops can only protect federal buildings or federal authorities who are attempting to do their work. So theoretically, the National Guard federalized could accompany ICE in this instance, in their pursuit of undocumented immigrants. That's what that law allows it to do. So, and that's where we're at. Yeah. And so,
but it's just such a narrow statute compared to like what the scale of what they're speaking about. They haven't done that yet.
Well, they're purposely trying to conflate the things.
Yes.
And even sending 700 Marines, where here's this picture of the National Guard. They completely were not prepared for the National Guard, the 2,000 National Guards people that they deployed. They're sleeping outside under nothing. They're sleeping in just these rooms. They have no food. They have no supplies. And the idea that they needed to deploy another 700 Marines, ostensibly because they couldn't deploy other National Guardsmen quick enough, when there is nothing for these National Guardsmen to do at this point. Like, the speculation is like, what federal buildings remain that the Marines can protect? And here's the other thing. And I've heard this now from, we had an emailer who is, maybe I'll read this when we come back. But also a piece written by David Day and some on-the-ground reporting he did yesterday. We're talking about essentially a 5-block radius in Los Angeles, which, in a place that is so sprawling, where like 20 minutes is, you can do a trip of 20 minutes like 12 times in LA, going from one end to the other, essentially. This is not a situation where like the entire city has to be on lockdown. Yesterday I said, 80% of LA isn't even aware of what's going on at any given moment because it's so removed. And this emailer corrected me and said, and despite the fact disagreeing with some of the other stuff that we had to say, 98% of LA has no idea what's going on at any given time. It's so isolated.
But the reason you all know about it, and you've probably seen the same image over and over again when you open your phone, is that the new corporate media in our lives that's affecting the way that we see the world is social media. We know from reporting with Cambridge Analytica and other things that these algorithms that Facebook, Meta, Instagram, right? Twitter now too, definitely. use are there to incite outrage or strong reactions, and political content does well, especially if it's inflammatory on the way that these algorithms are designed. So there is like this local newsification of our social media right now that is contributing to the reactionary moment that we're in, and these tech oligarchs that are in bed with the Trump administration are a part of crafting their media companies, which is what they are at this point, to favor the narratives that benefit the candidates that they like. And there should be way more awareness about what is being shown to you and what isn't. It's the same almost in terms of like how people are absorbing it as editorial discretion on other news networks.
Why are these soldiers here? Because so ICE can raid a Home Depot for people who are just trying to, I don't know, put some tiling in, and the community might get upset at them for that. We need to have troops on the ground for that. This entire thing is a Nazi-like lie to put people's attention on immigrants when everyone's lives have been destroyed by banks and capitalists and the investing class. Like, it's so transparent. We've already lived through this in world history. Why is this not so obvious to people?
But I mean, a decent amount of Trump voters voted to round up all immigrants. And
right,
that's what Stephen Miller's plan has always been. And part of the way that they will need to do that, if they're going to do that, is to have troops on the ground in every city. And you do not get to there from here without going through this.
And how do you get to there? How do you sell the public on getting to there? You call these people who are your neighbors, who are look at Home Depot looking for work, who are other Americans. They're Americans too. You make them into criminals. You demonize them. And that's what part of what the tech right is doing in concert with the administration. And we should be talking about it, I think, a little bit more.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.
Gavin Newsom on the deployment of military to L.A. Gavin Newsom, not necessarily my favorite person, but the point is he is the governor of California, and his state is challenging Trump's use of the military in this instance, which is going to be an important precedent to set. And hopefully it'll happen quickly. If you are to believe Ketanji Brown Jackson, Supreme Court Justice, it probably won't move as quickly as some of other things involving Trump. When Trump wants the Supreme Court to act quickly, that shadow docket immediately responds. When anybody else does, it seems to be very, very slow. But
and to your point, though, about how Newsom, not our favorite person, but it's important to have this on the books. The memorandum that Trump put out that basically authorized this did not specify. There have been a number of legal writers who've pointed this out. Did not specify a particular state, did not just say that this is for California. So this memorandum could be, in theory, used for other states. So it's important that California, given its size and population, stands up in this way.
You think things are now under control?
For the moment, but they're not about to be. He just called up another 2,000 National Guard, so it's now 4,000. And we're getting word that he's looking to operationalize that relationship and advance significantly larger scale ICE operations in partnership and collaboration with the National Guard. We're on the other side now of the red line. And I haven't even mentioned the self-evident major escalation, which is next level. And that is the Secretary of Defense just moments ago tweeting out that he's, quote unquote, deploying 700 active military to Los Angeles. And unless he just done it, I have not seen the Insurrection Act formally advanced, but by definition, this would require the Insurrection Act.
Yeah, I mean, I saw you have now filed suit to protest the federalizing of the California National Guard. These 700 Marines who are apparently being sent to Los Angeles, is there a legal avenue for you to challenge that deployment?
Well, unless he opposes the Insurrection Act, just blatantly unconstitutional. It's not even a close call. And so we're going to immediately try to seek a TRO, an injunction to stop this completely reckless, immoral, yes, but completely illegal and unconstitutional act. And I'll remind folks, this is an act not just against the people here in Los Angeles, against the people here in the state of California, but against Americans all across this country, against the principles of our founding father that did not live and die to watch these authoritarian tendencies in action. And let me be now even more specific. The absurdity of this cannot be understated. There were 2,000 National Guard that were, quote unquote, deployed, of which only 315 actually were mission assigned. 1,700 have no particular role or responsibility. Yesterday, local law enforcement had to protect the National Guard. The additional 2,000 National Guard men and women that President Trump now is redeploying are being taken away. It's the 79th Infantry. These are I know these folks well. You know these folks well. These are the folks, these are the National Guard men and women that have been out there protecting you here in Southern California during the fires, after the fires. We are now taking many of them off assignments on forest management, protecting communities, vulnerable communities against summer and wildfire season. We're removing them from task forces that we've created to deal with fentanyl interdiction. I have 384 men and women down at the border. I imagine they may even be pulled for this theatrical display of toughness by a president of the United States who's unhinged and has now crossed a red line in this country, and he has nationalized this order. This is not an order against this state. This is an order that can be imposed now all across the United States.
There you have it.
Accurate explanation by Newsom, and also about the concern broadly about this being a testing ground. I think I saw Karen Bass say something similar, and there's many issues with how they've responded to crises, including this one where there's some criticism on the ground about like Karen Bass being weak on this. So this is not to let them off the hook, obviously, but she said that basically it seems like this is a laboratory, what they're doing in California, to see
without a doubt
what they can get away with across the country.
Without a doubt. Let's cue up this one I just put in the IM, because here is Trump. You just heard Gavin Newsom say that 1,700 of the 2,000 are just sitting around, and that the National Guard are actually having to be protected now by the police department.
Right.
They have nothing to do. They have nothing to do under the auspices in which they were sent. And here is Donald Trump claiming that the police couldn't handle it, when in fact the police were the ones who ended up protecting the National Guard. Good.
Engagement. All I want is safety. I just want a safe area. Los Angeles was under siege until we got there. The police were unable to handle it. You can speak to the chief. He said it on television 3 nights ago. He said, this is more than we can handle. They said that. And the LA police, I know a lot of the police in LA, they're good.
That is exactly not what the police chief has said. The police chief has put out written statements saying, we don't need this. Go ahead.
This is more than we can handle. They said that. And the LA police, I know a lot of the police in LA, they're great people. But they're given instructions not to do this, not to do that. But in this case, they were trying their best. They were not able to handle it. It was out of control. When we got there, and you have to remember, I've been here before, and I went right by every rule. And I waited for governors to say, send in the National Guard. They wouldn't do it. They wouldn't. Engagement. All I want is...
They wouldn't do it. Yeah. They wouldn't do it. Like, which is it? They said that they needed the help, or they said they didn't need the help. Right. Incidentally, this is the same guy who, when it comes to FEMA, here, play this clip. This is in the same press conference that Trump had just gave moments ago. He's saying that he needs to send it in despite the fact that the governor, the mayor, and the police chief say we don't need this help. And here he is talking about disaster relief.
Thank you very much, Rachel, everybody. So we want to wean off of FEMA, and we want to bring it down to the state level. A little bit like education, we're moving it back to the states. So the governors can handle it. That's why they're governors now. If they can't handle it, they shouldn't be governor. But these governors can handle it, and they'll work in conjunction with other governors. They'll give each other a hand. But
okay, so there it is now. When it comes to a hurricane, a flood, earthquake, tornadoes, you guys got this. Listen,
give each other a hand.
It's just, you know, like, I mean, contemplate the notion of each of these states.
What? Oh, now it works too good.
Many of them are red states, of course. Contemplate the notion of each of them having to have a dedicated rescue operations, dedicated emergency workers. And I'm not saying, like, you know, the numbers they have now, they obviously have some. But how many do you think come in the wake of a hurricane or massive tornadoes or floods? 2 times the personnel? 3 times? 5 times? What about all the trailers, the specialized trailers? Are states supposed to just sort of maintain these things, buy them all, maintain them, do upkeep, hire people to service them? Of course they won't. Of course they won't.
Well, they would. This is probably Trump trying to push them towards privatization.
Yeah, I mean,
like down in New Orleans, and we saw how that worked in Hurricane Katrina.
Yep.
Even with like a completely, you know, anemic federal response, and
so on one hand, Trump is sort of shoving the National Guard down the throats of folks in California who have specifically said don't do it, and then pulling back resources for things like real emergencies. I mean, that's the story of what's going on here. And here is Trump just, was that this morning or yesterday?
Yesterday. Bring in
the troops, says Trump. And, of course, there's Charlie Kirk.
Saying bring in the troops if we, yep, there we go.
Charlie Kirk is all geeked up.
What, could they borrow some of the buses that you used on January 6th?
Yeah, exactly.
I think this was over the weekend, by the way, but
maybe say it is
June 9th.
Yeah.
Oh, does it say there? Oh, okay.
And then this is also, I mean, past the big, beautiful bill, this is, you know, how they're trying to shore up all the support as you have the Hawks versus the dead Hawks versus the tax cut people. Well, you're anti-American, you support the invasion if you don't pass the BBB.
What's the part that we're supposed to team up with Charlie Kirk about? Is it that he's anti-war? I can't remember now. What is it?
You know.
What is it that I know we're supposed to have a beer with him, but what is it that we're supposed to join Charlie Kirk in doing?
It's really tough to remember at this point, I gotta say.
You still have that ka-ching sound effect? Could answer things.
Honestly,
Speaking
what is it that we're
Newsom.
supposed to... What is it we're supposed to...
But right, isn't it... Right, I was reminded of that fluffy interview that Gavin Newsom conducted, the governor, on his podcast with Charlie Kirk.
Exactly.
Right? Yes.
Hey, Gavin, how'd that work out?
How'd it work out, buddy?
Why didn't Newsom just call Charlie Kirk and say, "Hey, man, we're gonna pod again? Let's do this." Instead of like we can have
so
a
much
debate.
in common, as you're basically saying, send in the troops over your newfound buddy's objection. Insane.
Pizza Dog. Local news confirming ICE raids at South Omaha meatpacking plants. Liberal city in a red state. Don Bacon's district. we have yet to see widespread ICE enforcement in a lot of the key red districts in red states.
Yep.
My understanding is Kristi Noem, I remember reports from like early in this administration, Kristi Noem apparently had a lot of people maybe at her farm.
Undocumented folks. There's targeting. They want to make a big display in cities because, of course, that's the decay of multiculturalism. And then they're going to move on to meet their quotas elsewhere. But this was all about the pretext of, setting up and expanding their authority and their power.
Oh, my.
I have just a late edition here. Zoran gave a press conference, and Dave Weigel quickly
Zoran.
part of it, just 20 seconds here about what America needs as from mayors in this moment.
Yeah.
It is authoritarianism. It is an example of what the Trump administration is already doing across this country and hopes to bring to cities from coast to coast. What we deserve in this moment is a mayor who can look that authoritarianism in the eye and not see a reflection of themselves.
Ooh.
There, next to him, Chiose, guest for tomorrow on this program.
Oh, yeah.
Very cool.
Cuomo's out there going like, wait, what? Wait.
Cuomo's the guy who got us through COVID by putting all those people in nursing homes to die.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of people who have absolutely no idea what they're talking about, this is a real murderer's row of on Piers Morgan. Wajat, the only one.
Right,
honestly, I was going to say, poor Wajat.
And the expression on his face kind of looks like he really.
Yeah.
How did I get into this?
He has that look of like, how did I get to be the one guy in this lineup here that was just brought in to make sure that the victim knew who they really were picking?
He's slowly backing up so he appears smaller in frame.
Exactly.
Just gonna dip out.
It's literally like they're doing a lineup of a bunch of criminals, and one of the cops like, hey, Bernie, can you jump in there for a minute? Because we only got 4. We need 5.
Which one does not belong?
Here is Dave Rubin. It is just fascinating. I had heard about, I can't remember what street it is, but in the West Village, that 86, the word 86, came from, there was a speakeasy, and all like the top, like well-known entertainers of the day would go there and drink. And there were 2 doors. One door was on like, it starts with a B. I can't remember what the name of the street. Bedford Street, right. Yeah. And then the back door was on another street. I don't know if it was like Charles or what. And so when the cops would come, like this was a protected speakeasy, but the cops would ever have to raid it every now and then. And they would go and they would send word 86 it, which meant go out 86 Bedford, and we're coming in the front at like Charles or whatever it was. And that's where the term came from. And then, you hear it in diners, 2 eggs, sunny side up. Wait, we're 86 on eggs, no more eggs.
Yeah.
Dave Rubin came up with a new term because apparently James Comey, if you were a right winger, you would know all the details to this, because this is the big scandal right now. Not the stuff where they're attempting to get rid of all the scientists in the country. Not the stuff where they're attempting to pull people off the street and disappearing them for writing op-eds. Not the defunding of colleges and universities. Not the defunding of the EPA, USDA, FDA. Not the bill that is going to kick 10, 12 million people off of Medicaid, kick millions off of food assistance, not the rolling back of all the green energy stuff. It's that James Comey, the guy who hasn't been in government for, I believe, 8 years.
Former FBI director, has an Instagram account, and he wrote 8647,
which was some type of slogan, not "Let's go Brandon," but rather it was like, let's get rid of
the 47th president.
Donald Trump.
And apparently on the right wing, they said that this was a death threat that Comey had decided to put on Instagram.
As opposed to just an attention grab from a guy that is seemingly like he should have been a YouTuber or something like that. He's just addicted to being in the headlines and no one likes you. The Democrats don't like you and the Republicans don't like you. Just go away. This
is just some, like private citizen now, or, God knows what he's doing, but he's certainly a private citizen just posting on Instagram, I don't like Donald Trump. And it became this huge scandal on the right because they have nothing else to talk about. And here's Dave Rubin and Piers Morgan clickbaiting on it. And here is Dave Rubin talking about it. And this is cut by Dave Rubin Clips 2 parody. People should check out this Twitter.
At Dave Clips.
At Dave Clips. And here is Dave Rubin. The music is put in by the Dave Rubin Clips.
Guys should have a pin over here. I told the truth. It's really incredible. The other thing about 86, and I'm impressed, I doubt you ever worked in a restaurant. I did, and yes, it's true. If they don't have the porterhouse anymore, you 86 the porterhouse. That means you don't have it anymore, so the waiters know when they're going out there. But the other thing that the 86 came from was the 86th floor on the Empire State Building. And do you know what the 86th floor on the Empire State Building is? That's the observation floor, and that's where the mafia in the old days used to take guys that owed them some money and toss them off the roof of the Empire State Building. That is a fact. You can also check that on Grok.
Pause it for a second now. If you're watching, if you're listening, somebody did in fact grok it. Does the 86 in James Comey's 8647 Instagram post refer to the 86th floor, the observation deck of the Empire State Building, where the mafia allegedly threw people off? Grok says no. The 86 in James Comey's Instagram post does not refer to the 86th floor of the Empire State Building or any alleged mafia practice of throwing people off the observation deck. This theory is a speculative urban legend without credible historical reference.
What?
The term 86 originates in the earliest 20th century American slang, primarily in the hospitality industry. Merriam-Webster and lexicologists trace it to the 1930s, 40s diner and soda counter slang, where it meant an item was sold out, unavailable, or that the customer should be refunded service. And there, Prohibition 86 Barrow Street. It was Barrow, not Bedford. I thought it was Bedford, though, actually.
The idea of people
it's
get thrown
Bedford.
off the Empire State Building is purely fictional. There's no.
I was just trying to find because
not even one case.
I was just laughing.
Not even one. Like,
it would be so messy.
Hey, do you think that we should put a fence over this? Because it feels like the mafia keeps throwing people off the roof. Don't worry about it. It's just a fluke.
After we throw the guy off the building and cause a splatter, 86 floors below, we got to make a plan for getting out of this building.
Just calm. Just wait for there's nobody else on the observation deck. Calmly walk to the elevator.
We're
and
just tourists, okay?
Yeah. What are you talking about?
And they walk outside and it's just red. The whole block is like brains and guts.
Here's how you do it. After you throw the guy off the building, you go, Jimmy, what are you doing? Don't jump off the building.
Oh, I committed suicide.
And then you go, darn it.
Because doesn't the mafia, they're putting people in concrete, they're, sticking them to the bottom of the ocean so you don't get found.
That's a rumor.
You're doing it at the most prominent place in the whole city.
That's the thing. You don't do it away from the prying eyes. It's like you always miss the thing.
Plain sight.
Right, exactly. You miss it right in front of your nose. Of course. You never want to do it that way. You do it
go to the Statue of Liberty and do it next week.
This is what you do. You take the stairs. That way they don't wait, there's no way these guys are taking the stairs 86 feet.
Yeah, Dave Rubin's Mafia Connection.
It's unbelievable how Dave Rubin is proof that there's literally no level of stupidity that you can have. An embarrassment. Like, there are times he's been, what was it that he went on to, what's her face,
Megyn Kelly?
Megyn Kelly, where she's like, no, that's not the case. Like right to his face. It's unbelievable. But here he is. It doesn't end there, folks.
that his doctor was completely
Go back. Yep. This is the grok, which Dave wanted people to look at.
That his doctor was completely incompetent at every level, meaning he didn't catch what is now very, very advanced, very easy to catch prostate cancer. As you said, you're 60 years old. You've had these PSA tests. I checked on Grok this morning. Grok recommends that men usually at about 45 years old. And that's what ChatGPT says as well. And you can talk to virtually any doctor that says that. See, this is the kind of obfuscation that you guys do with everything.
The reality is conservatives...
So that was a question, what did it say about white genocide? Of course, it was tried to program it to say pro-white genocide, and then it got the right answer that there's no...
Now Dave is saying, Dave has read half of this. Like, when is it recommended that you get prostate exams? And as someone who is somewhat elderly myself, I can tell you that does start, depending on whether, if there's any type of history or whatnot, it starts at an early age. But there's really two types of prostate cancer. There's the prostate cancer that kills you, which if it starts early can happen. And then there's the other type of prostate cancer, which many, many people die with. Because as you get older, not everybody, but many, many men have prostate cancer that is very slow moving, and you end up dying with prostate cancer, not from prostate cancer. Now, maybe Dave doesn't know this, but he's so sure of himself that it is hilarious. Because at one point,
armed with Grok,
there is an age where your doctor stops looking for prostate cancer because the length of time that prostate cancer would take to kill you, it's unlikely you're going to live that long. So if you're, I don't know, if it's 70 or 80, or the doctor stops examining you for it because chances are you're not going to live to 130 anyways. Right. And so it just becomes less relevant.
See, this is the kind of PTT says as well, and you can talk to virtually any doctor that says that. See, this is the kind of obfuscation that you guys do with everything.
The reality is conservatives know nothing about medicine. All of you guys on here are saying it's totally common to test for prostate cancer past 50. It's not. Past 70 is not recommended. Believe it or not, and I know in the movies and in the TV shows, it seems like you can test for every single thing at every point in time. You can't test for every single thing at every point in time.
Pause it, and here's Grok again. There are risk factors, but it goes on to say that you look at, keep going. Oh, here it is. Yeah. Okay. The U.S. Preventative Service Task Force recommends shared decision-making for men aged 55 and 69, between age 55 and 69, advises against routine screening for men 70 plus due to limited benefits. Like, there's not much you're going to be doing for prostate cancer when you're over the age of 70. Because it's slow moving, and any type of treatment is going to be more problematic than the actual slow moving prostate cancer. So they don't bother doing that because it just ends up becoming costly for society.
This is not the only, the Grok is really upsetting conservatives right now. Here's Marjorie Taylor Greene. Grok apparently weighed in. Marjorie Taylor Greene identifies as a Christian expressing faith in Jesus and traditional beliefs like in her 2021 Christmas message. However, her Christian nationalism and support for conspiracy theories like QAnon sparked debate. Critics, including religious leaders, argue her actions contradict Christian... Oh, let me put this up a little bit. Keep reading it, Emma.
Christian values of love and unity, citing her defense of January 6th and divisive rhetoric. Supporters may see her stance as faith-driven. Whether she's really a Christian is subjective, depending on her personal and theological views. Her faith appears genuine to her, but public actions create... And then it gets cut off.
But Marjorie Taylor Greene says, Grok, the seat of the judgment seat belongs to God, not you, a non-human AI platform. She addresses it as you.
Hey, Grok.
Grok is left-leaning and continues to spread fake news and propaganda. Like, what? Someone should inform Elon Musk.
Yeah, that was like he fumbled when he said, when he put in that white genocide stuff. It was a little bit too obvious.
When people give up their own discernment, stop seeking truth, and depend on AI to analyze information, they'll be lost. I agree with that. I'll also say here's another woman who took on an ad. I got this ad. I don't know if anybody else saw this because it didn't have that many. Only had like 3 reposts and 11 likes. But I thought this was a really wonderful example here. It's by somebody who says, if leftists keep teaching grok propaganda, it will not be useful to truth seekers. No one wants to be constantly exposed to manipulation. One of the grok answers to my idea of lowering income taxes and my cogent reasoning was actually met with a grok answer that justified 90% income taxes for the wealthiest groups. It becomes tedious to keep discussing things logically with others who use their propaganda or ridicule as arguments. So this person felt ridiculed by a robot.
It's like when your Roomba just won't do what you want it to.
There's like certain features of language models that kind of work as like an intern sort of like research capabilities. The people that are impressed that it is the voice of God are people who you wouldn't want to hire to be interns.
Yeah. But it would make sense that conservatives maybe fall in love with the machines.
I think it's some kind of oracle.
Or right, yeah, like see it as a god. They don't have media literacy, so that would make sense.
Going to argue with a robot,
right,
about how rich people should get tax breaks.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out. There's been a lot of response to Elon Musk leaving the administration. We tried to find a brain trust on the right who could delve into this for us. But what we did find was the Patrick Bet David podcast crew. Here they are talking about Elon Musk and what else are they?
The black eye, the failure of Doge, and all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
Fight till 3 o'clock in the morning, awake watching.
Okay, but you think that you get a black eye from a 4-year-old punching
you might
in the
have punched
face?
him in the face. Listen, again, we don't know the true story, but from looking at that behavior, I mean, it could be 2 things. He just got fired, and he's listening to the boss keep talking.
How much credibility do you give to the fact that he's been running around with this quote-unquote daily medication box filled with ketamine, ecstasy, mushrooms, and
distraction? I mean, there's something really scary
You don't
here.
think that is
Okay, wait. We should make this clear here. So they're talking about Elon Musk. What's the part about the black eye?
The black eye. So he was in. He had like a.
Oh, the black eye.
Yeah,
I thought they were saying black eye. Okay, so they're asking why Elon Musk had a black eye. They're responding to the reports that Elon Musk is on ketamine and God knows what else, seemingly throughout the day. And they brought in their research expert. What's that kid's name?
It is Brandon Aceto, Valuetainment's head of research.
He's the head of research. Is PBD? It seems to be off today.
No, he'll.
Oh, he's
show up
there.
in a little
Okay.
bit. Yeah.
Mushrooms and
Distraction. I mean, there's something really scary.
This is the head of research talking now.
You don't think that there's any credibility?
I don't care about it because of how scary what I actually think happened here. I think that this is so predatory because I think the Doge thing was a show because all he did was cut contracts, cut a few jobs, didn't touch defense, didn't touch Medicare, didn't touch Social Security. But what he did do is extract all of the data from the Treasury, from all the government departments, and then makes a deal with Palantir.
How do you know that he did that?
Which part?
The extracted all the information.
Because like they got the data to go through all of that.
How do you know that though?
I mean, I researched it and asked ChatGPT, and it said like, yeah, they collected vast amounts of data, and I asked Grok.
So I don't know. So you think he took the data from?
Pause it for a second. Like,
that's the head of research.
The head of research.
I mean, he's right.
Yeah, he's right. He's right. I mean, that's the thing is that it's. You could also. I sort of feel like if you're head of research, you should also be able to say, well, I saw this reporting in these 5 different if you're head of research.
Maybe mention the Intercept instead of ChatGPT and Grok.
If you're head of research, I feel like Grok and ChatGPT, it's fine, but I just feel like if you're head of research,
why don't they just have
If
Grok?
you're the deputy head of research, I can understand if you're just doing chat and Grok. But I really do feel like you got to say, reporting. But the problem is that, and this is what's fascinating about this thing, is that Chat, GPT, and Grok and all of them, they will take all of their answers from the Washington Post or the New York Times or maybe the Intercept. And the problem is for
if I start it up,
is that
it will make
they want to be able to say, well, the New York Times, of course, is liberal. The Washington Post is completely, the Intercept is a bunch of communists. But it gets laundered through Chat GPT. Now, obviously, it takes away views, and it's going to destroy the reporting business model.
Yep.
But it also launders it through, and so Grok says it's the case.
We're in this funny period where they haven't learned that saying Grok or ChatGPT says it is like saying I Googled it. What more do you want from me?
I Googled it and found it in 5 different places and just combined it together, and these are the different sources.
Let me see, I need to copy something over here. What do I need to copy over here? I want this to run as a math thing. What am I supposed to be doing right now? Everybody's in place. God, it's frustrating. I know I'm supposed to do something. I'm so tired right now. Oh, the lid. I need to do the lid. Every McFucking thing, every fucking McThing, boom, boom, boom. Why that got to be tied, so motherfucking tied. I keep falling in and out of consciousness. I think I should be ready to do this one. Oh man, I can't wait to stand up. I'm so tired. figure out why it's like the first few rounds it resets itself. That's way more than the first three. That's super duper annoying. Oh my, so tired. So why is the EXE acting so oddly? What's that about, baby? Alright, guess I'm just gonna let it run. Need to stop jerking around with it. I'm tired anyways. I don't like that it's doing that right there. That's resetting way too many times. I'm afraid that's going to be doing that in